The fluorescent lights of the Dolphin Mall hummed, a dull counterpoint to the piped music. Lin Xianglan's reflection shimmered in the polished tile floor, distorted and fragmented. She pushed her cleaning cart, the squeak of its wheels an irritating reminder of her position, her supposed insignificance. Yi Chusheng's voice, oily and condescending, sliced through the air. Still scrubbing floors, Xianglan? How's that vegetative husband of yours? Still drooling on his pillow? A ripple of laughter followed from the small group of mall employees clustered around him, their faces eager with malicious amusement. Chen Lili, her smile like a viper's strike, stood at Yi Chusheng's side, a possessive hand resting on his arm. Xianglan felt a knot tighten in her stomach, a familiar blend of anger and humiliation. He enjoys this, she thought, this petty display of power. Her fingers tightened around the handle of the mop. She wanted to scream, to lash out, but a cold, calculating voice within her whispered, "Not yet." "Ignore them," she murmured to herself, the words barely audible above the drone of the air conditioning. "Think of Baba. Think of the future." She focused on the rhythmic swish of the mop, trying to drown out their taunts. But the words, like barbed hooks, snagged at her composure. "You know," Yi Chusheng continued, his voice laced with mock sympathy, "you could have avoided all this. If you'd just been a little more accommodating." He let the words hang in the air, their implication clear. Chen Lili giggled, a high-pitched, grating sound. Xianglan's breath hitched. She could feel their eyes on her, dissecting her, judging her. They think they've won. The thought ignited a flicker of defiance within her. She straightened, her back suddenly rigid. The mop clattered against the tile, the sound sharp and unexpected in the hushed atmosphere of the mall. All eyes turned to her. Accommodating? Xianglan's voice, though quiet, carried a surprising weight. The amusement in Yi Chusheng's eyes flickered with a hint of unease. He hadn't expected this. He'd expected the usual meek submission, the downcast gaze. "You think I haven't been accommodating enough, Yi Chusheng?" Each word was precise, deliberate. A small crowd began to gather, drawn by the rising tension. Xianglan felt a strange calmness descend upon her, a sense of purpose that she hadn't felt in years. "You force me to divorce, it's just to marry my best friend," she paused, letting the words sink in, watching as Yi Chusheng's face paled. "You still sold me to one, killed 3 wives in succession. A plant person with an extremely ugly appearance, are you even human?" The silence that followed was absolute. The music seemed to fade into the background, replaced by the frantic thumping of Xianglan's heart. Yi Chusheng's face contorted in a mixture of shock and fury. Chen Lili gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The onlookers murmured amongst themselves, their whispers like the rustling of dry leaves. "They never believed me," Xianglan thought, a bittersweet triumph swirling within her. "They thought I was delusional, clinging to a fantasy." Yi Chusheng opened his mouth to speak, but before he could utter a word, a slow clap echoed through the mall. The sound, measured and deliberate, drew everyone's attention to a figure emerging from the shadows of a nearby storefront. It was Lao Wang, his usual hunched posture gone, replaced by an air of quiet authority. He walked towards Xianglan, his eyes, usually clouded with worry, now sharp and piercing. "Bravo, Xianglan," he said, his voice resonating with a power that no one had ever heard before. He reached her side, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. The gesture, simple yet profound, sent a wave of warmth through her. Baba, the thought was a silent prayer, a plea for strength. Yi Chusheng stared at Lao Wang, his face a mask of confusion. Who are you?" he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. Lao Wang smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that sent a chill down Yi Chusheng's spine. He turned to face the crowd, his gaze sweeping over the stunned faces. "I believe introductions are in order," he said, his voice now amplified by a hidden microphone. He paused, letting the anticipation build. My name is Wang Jiangwo, and I am the chairman of this mall. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Yi Chuxing staggered back as if struck. Chen Lily's face drained of all color. Xianglan, though she had known this moment was coming, still felt a surge of disbelief, a sense of unreality. It's really happening. Lao Wang, no, Chairman Wang, continued, his voice calm and measured. And this woman, he said, gesturing towards Xianglan, is my wife. He met her gaze, his eyes filled with a love and pride that made her heart ache. The crowd erupted in a cacophony of whispers and exclamations. Yi Chuxing's face was a study in horror. His carefully constructed world, his illusion of power and control, was crumbling around him. He looked at Xianglan, his eyes wide with disbelief and a dawning understanding. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught in his throat. The chairman turned back to Yi Chuxing, his gaze cold and unforgiving. As for you, Mr. Yi, he said, his voice laced with steel, I believe we have some unfinished business to discuss. The air in the Dolphin Mall buzzed with a strange energy. Shoppers bustled past, oblivious to the undercurrent of tension thrumming just beneath the surface of gleaming tiles and brightly lit storefronts. Lin Xianglan gripped her cleaning cart, knuckles white. The metallic scent of the cleaning solution mingled with the sweet aroma of pastries from a nearby bakery, a discordant symphony mirroring the chaos within her. He'll be here soon. The thought echoed in her mind, a drumbeat against the rising tide of anxiety. Yi Chuxing, her ex-husband, paced nearby, his phone pressed to his ear, a veneer of calm barely concealing the frantic energy radiating from him. Xianglan watched him, her gaze cold and distant. He thinks he's won. A bitter taste rose in her throat. He thought he had successfully traded her, discarded her like a worn-out shoe, to a man who wouldn't even know she was there. A man he believed to be a vegetable. Chen Lily, her supposed best friend, preened by a large mirror near the entrance to the chairman's office, adjusting the elaborate headpiece adorning her hair. The gaudy gold clashed with the sickly sweet smile plastered on her face. Xianglan felt a surge of nausea. She thinks she's won too. The thought was a sharp shard of ice in her chest. They both believed they had outsmarted her, secured their future on the back of her misery. They were so blinded by their greed, they couldn't see the trap they were walking into. The wedding procession will arrive soon, Yi Chuxing barked into the phone, his voice tight with anticipation. He snapped the phone shut and turned to Xianglan, his eyes glittering with a mixture of triumph and something else fear. Are you ready? Xianglan met his gaze, her expression unreadable. Ready for what? She asked, her voice flat, devoid of any emotion. Inwardly, a storm raged. Ready to watch your world crumble, Yi Chuxing? Ready to see your carefully constructed lies collapse around you? He mistook her calmness for resignation, a smug smile spreading across his face. Ready to finally fulfill your duty, he sneered. Ready to become the wife of the richest man in Qingzhou. The irony of his words was almost too much to bear. Xianglan almost laughed. Almost. She allowed a flicker of confusion to cross her face. But she trailed off, gesturing vaguely towards the chairman's office. Vegetative, Chen Lily finished, stepping forward, her voice dripping with false sympathy. But think of the life you'll have, Xianglan. Think of Chen Kai. He'll finally have the life he deserves. Chen Kai, their son, stood nearby, engrossed in a game on his phone, oblivious to the drama unfolding around him. He occasionally glanced up, his expression bored and impatient. Xianglan's heart ached for the boy he had become, so consumed by superficiality. He doesn't understand. He doesn't see. Yi Chuxing placed a hand on her shoulder, his grip surprisingly tight. The image of a vegetative person with bare walls, he murmured, his voice low, almost conspiratorial. It fits perfectly, it's just too perfect. No one will suspect. No one will question. He leaned closer, his breath hot against her ear. And you, Xianglan, you will be the wife of, he paused for dramatic effect, the richest man in Qingzhou. The air crackled with anticipation. The distant sound of drums reached them, growing louder with each passing second. The wedding procession was approaching. Xianglan could feel the weight of their gazes on her, the weight of their expectations, their greed, their lies. It's time. The procession, a riot of color and sound, poured into the mall. Traditional musicians played a lively melody, their drums echoing off the polished floors. Dancers twirled in vibrant costumes, their movements a mesmerizing blur. At the center of it all, carried on a palanquin, was the groom. Hidden behind layers of silk and ornamentation, his face remained unseen. Yi Chusheng and Chen Lili exchanged triumphant glances. They ushered Xianglan towards the palanquin, their hands pushing her forward, eager to seal their fate. As they neared, the music abruptly stopped. The dancers froze mid-twirl. A hush fell over the crowd. The curtains of the palanquin parted. Wang Jiangwo, her father, sat inside, his eyes sharp and clear, not a trace of the meek, helpless man they had seen before. He was dressed in an impeccably tailored suit, his posture radiating power and authority. The air thickened with shock. Yi Chusheng stumbled back, his face draining of color. Chen Lili gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Qingcai's phone slipped from his grasp, clattering to the floor. Wang Jiangwo stepped out of the palanquin, his gaze sweeping over the stunned faces before him. He looked at Xianglan, a flicker of warmth softening his expression. Then, his voice, amplified by a hidden microphone, boomed through the mall. I am Wang Jiangwo, chairman of the Dolphin Mall. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken truths. The shoppers, now a captive audience, murmured amongst themselves, their whispers growing into a wave of astonishment. Yi Chusheng stammered, but you were playing a role, Wang Jiangwo finished, his voice laced with steel. A role designed to expose the greed and deceit of those closest to me. He turned to Yi Chusheng, his eyes blazing with righteous anger. You thought you could sell my daughter to a helpless man? You thought you could profit from her misery? Yi Chusheng's face contorted in a mixture of fear and disbelief. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Wang Jiangwo turned to Chen Lili, his gaze cold and piercing. And you, he said, his voice dripping with contempt. You pretended to be her friend, all the while plotting behind her back. Chen Lili's carefully constructed facade crumbled. Tears streamed down her face, her carefully applied makeup smearing. She shook her head, unable to meet his gaze. Wang Jiangwo finally looked at his daughter, Xianglan. His expression softened, a hint of pride gleaming in his eyes. My daughter, he said, his voice filled with love and admiration. You endured so much, but you never gave up. You are stronger than you know. Xianglan's heart swelled with emotion. Tears welled in her eyes, but she held her head high, a newfound strength coursing through her veins. The fear and uncertainty that had plagued her for so long began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of profound relief and a quiet, unwavering resolve. The game was over, and she had won. The opulent office of the Dolphin Mall chairman shimmered, sunlight catching the crystal facets of the chandelier and reflecting off the polished mahogany desk. Yi Qingcai shifted uncomfortably in the plush leather chair, his gaze darting between his mother, Lin Xianglan, and the still figure in the wheelchair beside her. The vegetative husband, as his mother had introduced him, remained motionless, his eyes closed, his presence an unsettling weight in the luxurious room. Qingcai tugged at the collar of his designer shirt, a prickle of unease crawling beneath his skin. He hadn't believed his mother's story, not entirely. This sudden marriage, this sudden wealth, it all felt off. A nagging suspicion, a feeling of orchestrated events, clung to him like the cloying scent of his mother's cheap perfume, a scent that clashed with the expensive air freshener in the chairman's office. "Mother," Chinkai began, his voice laced with a practiced nonchalance that barely concealed his apprehension, "this whole situation, it's a lot to take in." Lin Xianglan's hands fluttered nervously at her sides. Her eyes, usually downcast, flickered towards the still figure in the wheelchair before returning to her son. He suspects something. The thought coiled in her stomach, a cold knot of anxiety. "I have to be careful." "I know, Chinkai," she said, her voice a strained whisper. "But it's true." "Your father's," she trailed off, unable to utter the lie again. Her gaze met the impassive face of the man in the wheelchair, and a shiver ran down her spine. This charade was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. "He's what?" Chinkai pressed, his voice sharp. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowed. "He hasn't moved, hasn't spoken." "How can you be sure he's even aware?" He gestured vaguely towards the motionless figure. Before Lin Xianglan could respond, a voice, deep and resonant, filled the room. "I assure you, young man, I am quite aware." The vegetative husband opened his eyes, their depths sharp and intelligent, holding Chinkai's gaze with an intensity that made the younger man recoil. The air in the room seemed to thicken, the silence stretching taut with unspoken truths. Lin Xianglan gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence. He's revealing himself now. But why? Fear twisted with a strange sense of anticipation, a dizzying cocktail of emotions that left her breathless. The man in the wheelchair straightened, his movements fluid and controlled, belying the image of fragility he had so meticulously crafted. He turned towards Lin Xianglan, his gaze softening, a flicker of something akin to amusement dancing in his eyes. "Xianglan, my dear, perhaps it's time we shed this pretense." He reached out, his hand covering hers. His touch, warm and firm, sent a jolt of electricity through her, a sensation so unexpected, so intimate, that it stole her breath. Chinkai stared, dumbfounded, at the transformation before him. The meek, invalid man had vanished, replaced by someone radiating power and authority. He recognized the face now, the face he had seen countless times in company brochures, on financial news channels. This wasn't just some random husband, this was the chairman, Wang Jiangwo, the elusive, almost mythical figure who controlled the Dolphin Mall empire. His mind reeled, struggling to process the implications of this revelation. The chairman, now revealed as Wang Jiangwo, turned his attention back to Chinkai. "I understand your skepticism, young man." His voice was calm, measured, yet laced with an underlying steel. "This performance was necessary. I needed to observe, to understand." He paused, his gaze sweeping over Lin Xianglan, a complex mixture of emotions flitting across his face. "Observe? Understand what?" Chinkai stammered, his carefully constructed facade of nonchalance crumbling. "To understand the woman I married," Wang Jiangwo replied, his voice low and intense. "I installed surveillance cameras in this house, Chinkai. I've seen everything. I've seen how she treated me when she believed I was helpless, how she cared for her father, how she endured thin pleasantries inflicted upon her by others." He paused, his gaze darkening. "I've seen how your ex-husband and his mistress behaved." Lin Xianglan's blood ran cold. Surveillance cameras? He had seen everything. Shame washed over her, a burning tide of humiliation. He had witnessed her at her most vulnerable, her most unguarded. Yet, beneath the shame, a flicker of something else ignited, a spark of hope. He hadn't discarded her. He had been watching, observing. But why? Whether it's a luxury car, a luxury house, Wang Jiangwo continued, his voice regaining its composure, even all the fame and fortune that comes with being my wife, none of that mattered. I wanted to see her true character. And what I saw, he looked at Lin Xianglan, his gaze softening, impressed me deeply. He squeezed her hand, his touch a silent reassurance. Qin Kai remained silent, his mind racing. This revelation had upended his world. His mother, the cleaning lady, married to the chairman. It was unbelievable, yet the evidence was undeniable. He looked at his mother, a new respect, a new understanding dawning in his eyes. Wang Jiangwo's gaze hardened, the steel returning to his voice. I have seen the injustices you suffered, Xianglan. The betrayal, the manipulation. And I assure you, his voice dropped to a near whisper, those responsible will face the consequences. He turned his gaze back to Qin Kai. This charade, this test, it's over now. The truth is out in the open. And the real game, he paused, a chilling smile playing on his lips, is about to begin. The room, if it could be called that, was barely larger than a storage closet. Dampness clung to the peeling paint, a musty odor permeating the air, a blend of mildew and stale hope. Sunlight, weak and watery, struggled to pierce the grimy windowpane, casting long, distorted shadows across the cracked floor tiles. Lin Xianlan knelt beside a makeshift bed, a thin mattress laid directly on the floor, her face a mask of quiet concern as she examined her father's bandaged leg. Lao Wang winced, a low groan escaping his lips. Xianlan's heart clenched. How could things have come to this? She thought, her stomach twisting into a tight knot. Just a few months ago, they had a modest but decent apartment, a life of quiet dignity. Now, they were crammed into this damp, suffocating room, relying on the begrudging charity of distant relatives. How could you possibly get better in this place, she murmured, her voice laced with a bitterness she usually kept tightly leashed. Her fingers gently probed the bandage, searching for signs of infection. The skin around the wound was inflamed, hot to the touch. Fear, cold and sharp, pricked at her. She couldn't afford a doctor, not even a cheap one. Not anymore. Lao Wang's eyes, usually bright and full of life, were dull with pain and resignation. It sits all right, Xianglan, he rasped, his voice weak. Don't you worry about me. You should be focusing on yourself, on finding a better situation. Xianglan forced a smile, a pale, brittle thing that didn't reach her eyes. A better situation. The words echoed in her mind, hollow and mocking. What better situation could there be for a woman like her? Divorced, discarded, with a sick father to care for. The world, once a canvas of possibilities, now felt like a cage, its bars forged from societal expectations and her own dwindling resources. We orphans and widows are really miserable, Lao Wang sighed, his gaze drifting towards the ceiling, as if seeking solace in the cracked plaster. No one likes us, his words, though spoken softly, struck Xianlan like a physical blow. Orphans and widows. The phrase hung in the air, heavy with the weight of their shared misfortune. A wave of despair washed over her, threatening to pull her under. She swallowed hard, fighting back the tears that pricked at her eyes. Don't say that, Baba, she said, her voice trembling slightly. We'll find a way. We always do. But even as she uttered the words, a hollowness gnawed at her. She knew, deep down, that their options were dwindling. The small sum of money she had scraped together from her cleaning job at the Dolphin Mall was barely enough to cover their rent, let alone food and medicine. I'd rather die, Lao Wang muttered, his voice barely a whisper. Xianglan's head snapped up, her eyes wide with alarm. Baba! Don't talk like that. She squeezed his hand, her own trembling. You have to get better. For me. For us. A long silence stretched between them, punctuated only by Lao Wang's labored breathing. Xianglan's mind raced, desperately searching for a solution, a glimmer of hope in the encroaching darkness. Then, an idea, fragile yet persistent, began to take shape. "How about you stay at my house for a month," she said slowly, carefully weighing her words. The offer, made on impulse, felt both reckless and necessary. She wasn't sure what she was getting herself into. "I'll go then. The pay is good," and the chairman, her voice trailed off, a flicker of unease crossing her features. She knew so little about the man she was supposed to care for. He was a phantom, a whisper in the corridors of the mall, his presence felt but never seen. "No, Xianglan," Lao Wang protested weakly. "I can't ask you to do that." "It's too much." "It's not too much," Xianglan interrupted, her voice firm. A newfound resolve hardened her gaze. This was it. This was her chance to regain some semblance of control, to carve a path forward, however uncertain. "I'll take care of you, Baba. And then we'll figure things out." The room, despite its squalor, suddenly felt less oppressive. A tiny spark of hope, flickering like a candle in the wind, began to burn within her. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to keep her going, enough to face the unknown future with a steely determination that surprised even herself. She would stay. She would fight. For her father, for herself, for the faint promise of a better tomorrow. The fluorescent lights of the Dolphin Mall hummed, casting a sterile glow on the polished floors. Lin Xianglan's reflection shimmered in the spotless tiles, a ghost of a woman clad in her drab cleaning uniform. She could feel the weight of Yi Chusheng's gaze, heavy and condescending, like a physical burden. He stood with Chen Lily, their intertwined fingers a blatant display of their illicit affair, a constant reminder of her betrayal. Like a pair of vipers, she thought, her stomach twisting with a familiar nausea. Basking in their stolen victory. Still scrubbing floors, Xianglan. Yi Chusheng's voice dripped with false concern, each syllable laced with mockery. He enjoyed this, she knew. This power he held over her, this ability to diminish her. Chen Lily giggled, a shrill, unpleasant sound that grated on Xianglan's nerves. "Some people are just born to serve, Chusheng. It's in their blood." She flicked a dismissive glance at Xianglan's uniform, her lips curled into a sneer. Xianglan's grip tightened on the mop handle. Her knuckles whitened. "Breathe," she told herself. "Don't give them the satisfaction." She had learned to build walls around her heart, brick by brick, to shield herself from their cruelty. But sometimes, the mortar crumbled, and the pain seeped through. "I find dignity in honest work," Xianglan replied, her voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil within. Every word was a carefully constructed shield, deflecting their barbs. Yi Chusheng chuckled, a sound devoid of humor. "Dignity? You call this dignity? You're nothing but a—" he paused, searching for the most cutting insult. "A relic of my past." The word stung, a sharp jab to her already bruised pride. But Xianglan refused to flinch. She met his gaze, her own eyes unwavering. "You underestimate me," she thought. "You both do." She had played the meek, subservient wife for too long. The charade was almost over. A figure emerged from the shadows of the mall corridor. Unassuming, dressed in simple attire, he blended seamlessly with the shoppers and staff. Yet, his presence seemed to shift the very air around them. It was Lao Wang, her father, the man they believed to be a helpless burden. But Xianglan knew the truth. She knew the steel beneath his gentle exterior. She knew the power he held. He approached them, his gait slow but deliberate. Yi Chusheng, blinded by his arrogance, didn't even register his presence. He continued his tirade, oblivious to the storm gathering on the horizon. "You came back just in time," Xianlan said, her voice soft yet carrying an undercurrent of steel. Her gaze flickered towards her father, a silent acknowledgement of their shared secret. Lao Wang stopped before them, his eyes, usually filled with gentle warmth, now hardened with an icy resolve. He looked at Yi Chusheng and Chen Lili, his gaze lingering on their intertwined hands. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken tension. "Mr. Yi," Lao Wang's voice was calm, almost too calm. It was the voice of a man who held absolute authority. "Ms. Chen. I believe we need to have a conversation." Yi Chusheng finally noticed him, his brow furrowing in confusion. "Who are you? What do you want?" He dismissed Lao Wang with a wave of his hand, as if brushing away an annoying fly. Lao Wang's expression remained unchanged. "I am the chairman of this mall," he stated, his voice still quiet, yet resonating with power. The words hung in the air, heavy with significance. Yi Chusheng's face paled. Chen Lili's grip on his hand tightened, her knuckles turning white. The arrogance that had moments before been so prominent now crumbled, replaced by a dawning fear. "I believe," Lao Wang continued, his gaze piercing, "that you have something that belongs to my daughter." He gestured towards the expensive handbag dangling from Chen Lili's arm. It was a gift from Yi Chusheng, purchased with funds meant for Xianglan and her father. A symbol of their greed and betrayal. Chen Lili stammered, her voice barely a whisper. I take all your garbage back," Xianglan said, her voice now laced with the authority she had kept hidden for so long. The mask of meekness had fallen away, revealing the strength that lay beneath. "Everything you stole from me. Everything you took." The realization of their predicament crashed down on Yi Chusheng and Chen Lili. Their carefully constructed world was collapsing around them. The power they thought they held was an illusion. "Why did you fire me?" Yi Chusheng's voice cracked, the arrogance gone, replaced by desperation. He looked from Lao Wang to Xianglan, his eyes darting back and forth like a trapped animal. "Not only did you sell me to a vegetable," Xianglan's voice was cold, devoid of any emotion, "you still want to drive me to a dead end. Your greed and cruelty have finally caught up with you." The mention of the vegetable, the man they had tried to force her to marry, hung in the air, a stark reminder of their depravity. Lao Wang, her father, the man they had dismissed as a helpless old man, was that very vegetable. He had orchestrated this entire scenario, a test of her character, a way to expose their true nature. "Never say you are my ex-wife in the future." Xianglan's final words were a declaration of independence, a severance of all ties. She turned and walked away, her back straight, her head held high. She was finally free. The fluorescent lights of the Dolphin Mall hummed, their sterile glow illuminating the scene of Yi Chusheng and Chen Lili's downfall. The vipers, once so venomous, were now stripped of their fangs, their reign of terror finally over. The polished tiles of the Dolphin Mall gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights, reflecting the tense faces gathered near the central fountain. Lin Xianglan stood a little apart, her simple cleaner's uniform a stark contrast to the sharp suits and fashionable dresses of the onlookers. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. This was it. The moment of truth. She could taste the metallic tang of fear, but beneath it, a strange sense of calm was beginning to surface. She'd played her part, the meek, downtrodden cleaner. Now, the curtain was about to rise on the final act. Yi Chusheng, his face a mask of bewildered rage, gestured wildly. "All of you attack now," he roared, his voice cracking with a desperate edge. He jabbed a finger towards Xianglan, the gesture laced with venom. "She's lying. This is all a charade." He couldn't comprehend what was happening. Just moments ago, he had been on the cusp of victory, ready to discard Xianglan like a used rag. Now, his carefully constructed world was crumbling around him. The whispers of the crowd, the questioning glances of his colleagues, they were like tiny needles pricking at his inflated ego. Chen Lili clung to Yi Chusheng's arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his flesh. Her eyes, wide with panic, darted between Xianglan and the growing crowd. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. The plan had been flawless. Xianglan, drugged and compliant, would be shipped off to that dilapidated house, married to a vegetable. And they, Chen Lili and Chusheng, would be free to enjoy their ill-gotten gains. A wave of nausea washed over her. The scent of her expensive perfume suddenly felt cloying, suffocating. A ripple of movement passed through the crowd. A hush fell, heavy and expectant. A figure emerged, his gait slow and deliberate. He was dressed in simple, almost worn clothing, a stark contrast to the opulent surroundings of the mall. Wang Jiangwo, Xianglan's father, her supposed burden. He stopped a few feet from Xianglan, his gaze sweeping over the assembled crowd. He looked frail, almost insignificant. But in his eyes, a spark ignited, a glimmer of steel. "I have a feeling she is a kind woman," he said, his voice soft yet carrying an unexpected weight. He turned to Xianglan, a gentle smile gracing his lips. "This is the woman," he began, his voice growing stronger, firmer. Xianglan's breath caught in her throat. Her father. The man she had worried about, the man she had struggled to protect. He wasn't the helpless, aging man he pretended to be. She felt a surge of pride, a fierce protectiveness rising within her. "My wife." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. The crowd gasped. Murmurs rippled through the onlookers. Yi Chusheng's face paled, his jaw slackening in disbelief. Chen Lili swayed, her carefully constructed composure shattering like thin ice. Wang Jiangwo straightened, his demeanor transforming. The air of frailty vanished, replaced by an aura of authority, of command. He was no longer the meek old man. He was the chairman. The owner of the Dolphin Mall. The man whose power resonated through every inch of this building. "Want to use the chairman to suppress me?" Wang Jiangwo's voice, now resonant and powerful, cut through the stunned silence. He fixed Yi Chusheng with a chilling stare. "You thought you could deceive me? You thought you could manipulate my wife?" Yi Chusheng stammered, his words tangled in fear and confusion. He tried to speak, to defend himself, but the words wouldn't come. He felt a cold dread creeping up his spine, a premonition of the impending doom. His carefully constructed world, his ambitions, his future, it was all dissolving before his eyes. Wang Jiangwo turned to Chen Lili, his gaze sharp as a blade. "And you," he said, his voice dripping with contempt, "you thought you could steal what was mine." Chen Lili's face was ashen. She opened her mouth to plead, to beg for forgiveness, but no sound escaped her trembling lips. She felt a crushing weight on her chest, the weight of her greed, her betrayal. It was suffocating her, stealing her breath. Wang Jiangwo addressed the crowd, his voice ringing with authority. "I'll give you one last chance. Those who have wronged my wife, those who have participated in this scheme, confess now, and I will show leniency." A wave of confessions erupted, a cacophony of voices vying to be heard. Fingers pointed, accusations flew. The carefully maintained facade of politeness and decorum shattered, revealing the ugliness beneath. Wang Jiangwo raised his hand, silencing the clamor. He turned to Xianglan, his eyes softening. "Xianglan," he said, his voice gentle, "this is your domain now." Xianglan felt a surge of emotion, relief, gratitude, and a newfound sense of power. She met her husband's gaze, a silent understanding passing between them. Wang Jiangwo gestured towards Yi Chusheng. "Your position as manager," he announced, his voice resonating with finality, "is now hers." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Yi Chusheng's face crumpled, the last vestiges of hope draining away. From the periphery, a young man pushed his way through the throng. Yi Qingkai, Xianglan and Chusheng's son, his face etched with anxiety. "Dad," he pleaded, his voice laced with a desperation that had nothing to do with his father's downfall and everything to do with his own precarious social standing. "Dad, please lie down quickly." He glanced nervously at the chairman, his father's disgrace reflecting poorly on his own carefully crafted image. The irony was lost on no one. Wang Jiangwo's gaze softened as he looked at his wife. He extended his hand towards her. "It seems like the wedding procession is arriving," he murmured, a hint of amusement in his voice. The tension finally broke, replaced by a quiet understanding. He knew the battles weren't over, but for now, they had won. He looked at Xianglan, his eyes reflecting the depth of his love and respect. Together, they walked away, leaving the wreckage of deceit and betrayal behind them. The Dolphin Mall, once a symbol of Yi Chusheng's ambition, now stood as a testament to Xianglan's resilience and the unwavering love of her husband. The crisp scent of antiseptic still clung to her, a stark contrast to the aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafting from a nearby kiosk. Lin Xianglan smoothed the fabric of her new suit, a simple but elegant charcoal gray, a far cry from the worn denim of her cleaning uniform. The Dolphin Mall bustled around her, a symphony of chattering voices and the rhythmic click of heels against polished tiles. She observed the shoppers, their faces animated with anticipation, their hands laden with bags. A pang of unfamiliar lightness touched her chest. This wasn't her mall anymore, not in the same way. She wasn't just a cleaner, invisible against the backdrop of gleaming storefronts. She was something else. Something more. The weight of years spent scrubbing floors, the sting of Yi Chusheng's condescending remarks, the gnawing fear of poverty, it all seemed distant, a blurry image in a cracked mirror. A voice, crisp and efficient, sliced through the ambient noise. "Xianglan will officially take office tomorrow." Mr. Zhang, the mall's legal counsel, stood before her, his face creased with a professional smile. "The chairman insists you familiarize yourself with the administrative wing today." Xianglan swallowed, a knot of apprehension tightening in her throat. An office? A real office? The thought seemed alien, almost absurd. Her mind flashed back to the cramped, dusty storeroom where she'd spent countless hours sorting cleaning supplies, the pungent smell of bleach burning her nostrils. Could she really transition from that to this? Yi Chusheng's face, contorted with a mixture of disbelief and fury, swam before her eyes. The echo of his accusations, ungrateful, scheming, gold digger, reverberated in her ears. A flicker of doubt, a cold finger of fear, traced a path down her spine. Was she truly capable of this? Did she have the strength, the knowledge, to navigate this new world? Later, in the quiet elegance of the chairman's office, she watched the city lights twinkle like fallen stars. The panoramic view from the floor-to-ceiling windows was breathtaking, a tapestry of shimmering gold against the deepening indigo sky. The rich mahogany desk, the plush leather chairs, the subtle scent of sandalwood, it all felt surreal. A world away from the stale air and harsh fluorescent lights of her previous existence. "I'll give you one last chance," she had told Yi Chusheng, her voice steady, though her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. The memory of his stunned silence, the dawning comprehension in Chen Lily's eyes, filled her with a strange sense of satisfaction. A justice long overdue. But even in this moment of triumph, a lingering unease clung to the edges of her consciousness. The sudden revelation of Lao Wang's true identity, the carefully constructed charade, the years of hidden wealth had left her feeling disoriented, as if the ground beneath her feet had shifted. She understood his reasons, his desire to protect her, to test the true nature of those around him. Yet, a part of her yearned for the simplicity of their previous life, the shared struggles, the quiet comfort of their small apartment. The soft chime of a grandfather clock broke the silence. She glanced at the time, surprised by how late it had become. "It's going to be dark soon," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. The thought of Lao Wan, of her father, alone in their now empty apartment, sent a wave of concern through her. "I have to hurry to find Lao Wan." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken emotions. Guilt, relief, love, and a profound sense of bewilderment. The city lights blurred as she hurried through the deserted corridors of the mall, her footsteps echoing in the stillness. Each click of her heels against the polished floor seemed to mark the transition from one life to another. The woman who had entered the mall that morning, clad in her faded uniform, was gone. In her place stood someone new, someone stronger, someone ready to face the challenges and uncertainties of the future. The road ahead was unknown, a path shrouded in mist. But as she stepped out into the cool night air, a sense of anticipation, a flicker of hope, ignited within her. She was Lin Xianlan, and her story was just beginning.